I'm about ready to do the invisible or tubular bind off, but I'm still preparing for it. I've already worked one round where I knit the knit stitches in my knit one purl one ribbing, and I slipped the yarn in front of the purl stitches and then knit the next knit stitch. Now because I'm working in the round, I've got to reverse that on the next row, and I'm almost done. So I've been purling the purl stitches and I've been slipping the knit stitch, and I've been purlwise, by the way, and I've been purling the stitch, and I want to do this loosely. I do not want to pull the yarn tightly because it's this slipping stitch that's going to give this added elasticity. Okay, I'm going to slip the knit stitch purlwise so it won't be twisted. I'm going to purl the next stitch, and again I didn't change needles, so I still got these slippery needles, and slip the next knit stitch and purl the next knit stitch, purl stitch, slip. Now you can have more than 2 rows of this if you want, but I usually only work 2 rows. Now the next step is to cut my yarn, and I'm a little paranoid since I did this once and I didn't have enough yarn, so I tend to have a really long piece, and I'm sure there's some formula somewhere that I could look up to see exactly how much yarn, but I am not much of a formula person. So I'm just going to cut this, and I got a lot of stitches on this needle since these are thigh highs, and I'm going to thread up a small tapestry needle and try not to shred the yarn. And boy, did I cut it long. I can go back and trim this if I want later. Like I said, I tend to be a little paranoid since that one rather bad experience. Now, to do an invisible bind off is pretty easy. You just have to go slowly, and I would recommend, if you're doing this, not answering the phone, eating dinner, going to bed, whatever. Start and then finish up. The first step is to go into, I have a knit stitch on this side, and this is the best way to set this up, and a purl stitch on this one. I go through the purl stitch knitwise, that is from the bottom to top, and I mess all my yarn around trying to keep it off the needle. Except I got it caught on another needle. That's an advantage for not having a long strand. Okay, so I've gone through knitwise. The next step is to go in through the knit stitch on my needle and the knit stitch on my right needle and through on my left needle. Okay, purlwise, that is from top to bottom. And again, yarn management, because I insisted on cutting this extremely long thread, which I might probably will go in there and fix in a minute. Okay, and so the yarn is stranding from that knit stitch to this knit stitch, and then I go through the purl stitch in the middle purlwise. And then I drop that purl and knit stitch off the needle. And that's what I do. I do that over and over again. I go through the knit stitch, or the purl stitch rather, as if to knit. I go through the knit stitch on this side, and that's the only tricky thing, is seeing that knit stitch. And if you're having trouble seeing it when you first do this, get a little safety pin and run it through the knit stitch, and then you'll be able to identify it. Through the knit stitch on the other side, purlwise, that is from top to bottom. And then purlwise through that purl stitch, and then drop. And this is just 4 steps. Okay, and there's that knit stitch I'm going to be going through in a minute. It's always kind of elongated. Knitwise through the purl, step 1. Purlwise through the knits. And purlwise through the purl in between, and drop. And that's all there is to it. Now you can see that it gives a rather tubular edge to it, a lot like you see on commercially made socks.